You know, when you think of Charles Darwin, you think of his world-changing book on the origin of species. It gave us the theory of evolution by natural selection. But here's the thing most people don't realize. That masterpiece? It had a giant hole on it. A puzzle so big, it nearly sank the whole idea.
So what was this massive flaw? Well, it boils down to a question that seems almost ridiculously simple today. How do parents actually pass traits down to their kids? Darwin knew it happened, obviously, but he had no clue how. And the common belief back then? Oh, it wasn't just wrong, it was basically poison for his theory.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with Darwin's puzzle. Check out his kind of brilliant but wrong solution, see how it got tested, and watch as the real answer finally came together. It's not just a story about evolution, it's the story of how the theory of evolution, well, evolved.
Okay, so to really feel the pressure Darwin was under, you have to put yourself back in the 1800s. The big idea about how we inherit stuff was, well, it was super simple and intuitive. They called it blending inheritance.
And honestly, it makes a lot of sense on the surface, right? You mix black paint and white paint, you get gray. And here's the key part. You can't unmix it to get the pure black and white back. People figured, hey, that's how kids work too. A tall parent and a short parent have a medium-height kid. Simple. But then this really clever engineer, Fleming Jenkin, looked at this and went, uh-oh, this is a huge problem for Darwin.
And this is the absolute deal breaker. Just imagine, a new, super useful trait pops up. Let's say a gazelle is born that's way faster than any other. Awesome, right? But if blending is the rule, when that super gazelle has babies with a regular one, their kids are only half as fast. And their grandkids, a quarter as fast. That amazing new speed gets diluted away into nothing in just a couple of generations. It's gone before natural selection can even notice it. It just gets washed out.
Now, Darwin was no fool. He knew this was a potential knockout blow. He absolutely had to solve this, so he came up with his own theory of inheritance. It was called pangenesis, and honestly, it was an incredibly creative idea. Totally wrong, as it turns out, but really clever.
Okay, so get this. Here's how pangenesis was supposed to work. Darwin pictured that every single part of you, your muscles, your brain, everything, is constantly giving off these tiny little particles he called gemmules. So let's say you're a blacksmith, and you develop these massive, strong arms. The idea was that your arm cells would shed strong arm gemmules. These little guys would travel through your body, find their way to your reproductive cells, and boom, your kids could be born with a genetic head start on having strong arms. Wild, right? And you see why this was so brilliant for his problem? It completely solves the blending issue. It means there's a constant stream of new, useful variations for natural selection to grab onto. The environment wasn't just a passive filter, picking winners and losers. No, it was an active participant in creating those winners. In Darwin's view, this made natural selection way, way more powerful. But here's the thing about science, and it's what makes it so cool. A beautiful idea isn't enough. You have to be able to test it. You have to make a prediction and see if it holds up in the real world. And pangenesis? Yeah, it was about to go on trial.
So two key experiments really put this to the test. First, Darwin's own cousin, a guy named Francis Galton, thought, okay, if these gemmules are everywhere, they've got to be in the blood. So he did something pretty straightforward. He transfused blood from black rabbits into white rabbits. The prediction? The white rabbits should start having speckled or gray baby bunnies. Meanwhile, over in Germany, a biologist named August Weismann did something a little more direct, and yeah, kind of grim. He figured if you can pass on acquired traits, then he'd acquire one for some mice. For more than 20 generations, he chopped the tails off of mice.
And the results? They were crystal clear. And for pangenesis, they were brutal. Galton's white rabbits had perfectly white babies, no sign of the black rabbit's blood at all. And Weismann's mice, after 22 generations of having their tails removed, every single baby mouse was born with the perfectly normal long tail. The evidence was in. Pangenesis was a beautiful idea, but it was just wrong.
But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. This failure wasn't the end. In fact, proving pangenesis wrong was the key to the next big breakthrough. And it came from the same guy who was doing all that tail chopping, August Weismann.
Weismann came up with this idea that was truly revolutionary. He proposed that there's a kind of wall, a total separation between your body's cells, what he called the soma, and your reproductive cells, the germline, so eggs and sperm. This is what we now call the Weismann barrier.
So what does that actually mean? Think of it like this. Your genetic blueprint, the actual instructions for building you, is locked inside a super secure vault. That's your germline.
Information can come out of the vault to build your body, but nothing that happens to your body, nothing, can get back in to change the blueprint. You can work out and get huge, you can learn a language, you can lose a limb. None of it changes the genetic code you pass on to your kids. It's a one-way street, period.
And this insight just flipped the whole idea on its head. The stuff evolution works with, variation, it's not created by what you do in your life, like Darwin's pangenesis suggested. Nope, it comes from random changes, mutations, that happen inside that protected germline, and that's a huge deal. It means creating variation and selecting variation are two completely separate things.
So the Weismann barrier was a massive piece of the puzzle. But one critical piece was still missing. And that piece came from the work of a monk that had been sitting on a shelf, totally ignored for decades. A guy named Gregor Mendel and his humble pea plants.
So check out how this all comes together. First, you've got Darwin's big idea, natural selection. Then, Weismann builds his barrier, which explains why your life experiences don't change your kids' genes. And then finally, Mendel's work gets rediscovered and it provides the actual instruction manual for heredity. It showed that traits aren't blended like paint. They're passed down in distinct units. You put all that together over a few decades, and you get what we call the modern synthesis. And this is basically the foundation of evolutionary biology as we know it today. Here's the core of it. Variation happens because of random genetic mutations. It's not purposeful. The environment doesn't ask for it. Then, natural selection acts on all that random variety, and the traits that happen to work better in a given environment get passed on more. And over millions of years, that's how life changes. Darwin's theory finally had the engine it needed.
So when you step back and look at this whole story, what's the big lesson? For me, it's about how science really works. It's not about finding a perfect idea and sticking to it forever. Theories aren't commandments set in stone. They're living, breathing things that have to change and adapt when new facts come along.
There's this amazing quote from Thomas Huxley that just nails it. The great tragedy of science, the slaying of a beautiful hypothesis by an ugly fact. And that's exactly what happened here. Pangenesis was a beautiful idea. It was so elegant, but the ugly facts from those rabbits and mice killed it. And that's how it has to be. In science, the facts win. Always.
And this is so important. When pangenesis failed, the whole theory of evolution didn't come crashing down. Just the opposite. It got so much stronger. It evolved. It took on these new ideas, the Weismann barrier, genetics, and became a much, much better explanation of reality. That's the sign of a really healthy scientific idea. It can fix itself.
And you know what? That process is still happening. We're learning about new things like epigenetics, which shows how the environment can sometimes influence how our genes are expressed. It's adding all these new, complex, and fascinating layers, but it's not tearing down the whole building. It's just making it a more detailed and accurate structure. So that leaves us with a pretty cool thought, doesn't it? We've just watched the theory of evolution itself evolve, getting stronger every time it was challenged by a new fact. So, as we keep digging deeper into the secrets of life, what's going to be the next discovery that shapes it? What's the next ugly fact that will force this incredible idea to evolve yet again?